Your mother has days, not months. What price would you pay for her life? In the city, there's a place. Madam Jelani's house. Women work there, entertaining men. They make more money in one night than you make in months selling your pretty pictures. Please like, subscribe, and share if you enjoy this story. Your support means everything to us because you are our family. Thank you for joining us for another tale of wisdom from the heart of Africa. The red dust of Mombasa's outskirts swirled around Zuri's bare feet as she walked the familiar path home from the market. At 19, her slender frame carried both the day's meager purchases and the weight of responsibilities far beyond her years. The setting sun cast long shadows across the shanty settlement where she had lived all her life with her mother, Esh, a woman whose beauty had once been legendary but now was buried beneath years of hardship and illness. "Mama, I'm home," Zuri called out as she ducked through the low doorway of their one-room dwelling. The interior was dim, but tidy. Zuri made sure of that. Cleanliness cost nothing, her grandmother had always said. Esh lay on the thin mattress in the corner, her breathing labored. The tuberculosis that had plagued her for 3 years had worsened dramatically in recent weeks. "Did you get the medicine?" Esh whispered, her once melodious voice now raspy and weak. Zuri set down her basket and knelt beside her mother. "No, Mama. The price has gone up again. But I sold 2 of my paintings to tourists at the market. Tomorrow I'll have enough." This was a lie. The paintings, vibrant depictions of Kenyan wildlife and landscapes that Zuri created using discarded paints from a nearby school, had indeed sold, but the money wasn't nearly enough. The medicine her mother needed was imported and expensive, well beyond what their meager income could provide. Esh closed her eyes, tears seeping from the corners. "My beautiful daughter. Always taking care of your useless mother. Don't talk like that," Zuri chided gently, wiping her mother's brow with a damp cloth. "Rest now. I'll make some tea." Later that night, after Esh had fallen into a fitful sleep, Zuri sat outside beneath the star-filled sky, calculating and recalculating how long it would take to save enough for the medicine. 2 months, perhaps 3. Time her mother didn't have. "There is another way," came a voice from the darkness. Zuri startled, then relaxed as she recognized Bibi Faraji, the old woman who lived 3 shacks down. People said she was a witch. Zuri didn't believe in such things, but she respected the woman's knowledge of herbs and healing. "What way, Bibi?" The old woman sat heavily beside her, joints creaking. "Your mother was once the most beautiful woman in Mombasa. You have inherited her beauty, child." Zuri shifted uncomfortably. "Beauty doesn't pay for medicine." "But it can," Bibi Faraji replied, her voice pitched low. "In the city, there's a place. Madam Jelani's house. Women work there, entertaining men. They make more money in one night than you make in months selling your pretty pictures." Zuri's stomach clenched. She knew of such places. "You're speaking of a brothel." "I'm speaking of survival," the old woman countered. "Your mother has days, not months. What price would you pay for her life?" The question haunted Zuri through a sleepless night. By morning, her decision was made. The Lotus House stood in stark contrast to the surrounding buildings, a colonial-era mansion painted a deep blue, with white balconies and a high gate. Zuri approached it with her heart hammering against her ribs, clutching a scrap of paper with Madam Jelani's name scrawled across it. The woman who answered the gate was tall and elegant, her face carefully painted, her silk dress clinging to mature curves. Her sharp eyes assessed Zuri with professional detachment. "Bibi Faraji sent me," Zuri said, her voice barely above a whisper. "Of course she did," the woman replied, an edge of amusement in her tone. "I'm Madam Jelani. Come inside before you're seen." The interior of the Lotus House was like nothing Zuri had ever experienced, luxurious fabrics draped across ornate furniture, the scent of exotic perfumes heavy in the air. Young women lounged in various states of undress, some watching her curiously, others with thinly veiled pity. In a private room adorned with peacock feathers, Madam Jelani circled Zuri slowly. "Undress." Shame burned through Zuri's body as she removed her simple dress. Madam Jelani examined her like livestock at auction, commenting on her smooth skin, slender waist, and high breasts. "You'll do well here," she finally declared. "I'll advance you money for your mother's medicine. You'll work it off, plus interest." "How long?" Zuri asked, pulling her dress back on with trembling hands. Madam Jelani's smile didn't reach her eyes. "That depends on how popular you become, doesn't it? Most girls work off their debts in a few years." "Years." The word echoed in Zuri's mind as she signed the paper. Madam Jelani presented a contract she could barely read, binding her to this place until her debt was repaid. That evening, Zuri returned to her mother with medicine and food. She explained her sudden fortune with a carefully constructed lie about a job cleaning for a wealthy family in the city. "They're very generous," she told her relieved mother. "I'll be living in their servants' quarters, but I'll visit whenever I can." Esh's frail hand squeezed hers. "You are a blessing from the ancestors, my Zuri. Always so good." The words were daggers in Zuri's heart. The Lotus House operated under a simple system. The women were given elegant clothes, regular health checks, and basic room and board. In exchange, they entertained male clients, wealthy businessmen, politicians, tourists, with their bodies and their company. Most of the money went to Madam Jelani, with the women receiving a small percentage, much of which was then reclaimed as payment toward their debts. Zuri's first night with a client was a nightmare she endured by mentally removing herself from her body, focusing instead on the patterns in the ceiling plaster while the man grunted above her. Afterward, she scrubbed her skin raw in the shared bathroom, sobbing silently. But the following week, her mother's health began to improve. The coughing lessened, her appetite returned. The doctor spoke cautiously of recovery. A miracle, he called it. A price, Zuri thought. As weeks stretched into months, Zuri developed strategies for survival. She learned to smile convincingly, to feign interest in her clients' lives, to laugh at their jokes. Some were cruel, but most were merely selfish and oblivious. Occasionally, she even encountered kindness, a client who treated her gently, who spoke to her as a person rather than a possession. The other women became a surrogate family of sorts. Nia, who had been at the Lotus House for 7 years, took Zuri under her wing, teaching her the unwritten rules of their world. Amora, barely 17, shared her hidden stash of sweets and whispered dreams of escape. Even stern Madam Jelani showed occasional moments of humanity, providing protection from the most violent clients and quality medical care when needed. Yet beneath the surface glitter of the Lotus House lurked a brutal truth. They were prisoners, their debts manipulated so they could never quite earn their freedom. When Zuri quietly asked how much she still owed after 6 months of work, the sum had somehow grown rather than shrunk. "You broke that crystal vase, remember?" Madam Jelani reminded her smoothly. "And there was that client who complained you weren't enthusiastic enough. We lost his business. These things have consequences, dear." 1 year after Zuri entered the Lotus House, her mother died peacefully in her sleep. The medicine had extended her life but couldn't cure her completely. Zuri was permitted to attend the simple funeral, escorted by one of Madam Jelani's guards to ensure her return. Standing beside her mother's grave, Zuri realized with hollow despair that her sacrifice had lost its purpose. Yet she remained trapped, bound by an unrepayable debt and her own shame. Jabari Okoro had not intended to visit the Lotus House. The tech entrepreneur was in Mombasa for a conference on digital innovations in East Africa, staying at one of the city's luxury hotels. However, when the government minister he was courting for a major contract suggested they continue their discussion in a more relaxed environment, Jabari found himself stepping into the blue mansion with its white balconies. "Finest establishment in Kenya," the minister boasted. "Madam Jelani runs a clean, discreet business. Only the best girls." Jabari nodded politely while inwardly recoiling. At 34, he had built his technology company through discipline and integrity, values inherited from his grandmother who had raised him after his parents' death. Places like this, where women were commodities, violated everything he believed in. Yet business was business, and in Kenya, as in much of the world, certain distasteful social rituals remained part of closing important deals. The evening progressed predictably: drinks in a lavish sitting room, forced laughter at the minister's crude jokes, the parade of women presented for their selection. Jabari chose a quiet girl with downcast eyes, planning to pay for her time but request nothing more than conversation. In a private room adorned with heavy crimson curtains, the girl, who had introduced herself as Zuri, stood awkwardly by the bed. "Please," Jabari said gently, "sit wherever you're comfortable. I just need to maintain appearances with the minister. We don't have to do anything." Confusion flickered across Zuri's face before she cautiously settled into an armchair across from him. "That's very kind, but Madam will know if a client isn't satisfied." "Then I'll ensure she believes I was extremely satisfied," Jabari replied with a reassuring smile. "Tell me about yourself instead. How did someone like you end up in a place like this?" Perhaps it was his genuine interest, or simply the unexpected relief of not having to perform, but something in Zuri cracked open. Words spilled out about her mother's illness, the medicine she couldn't afford, the loan that had become an inescapable trap. "After my mother died, I tried to leave," she explained, tears threatening. "Madam Jelani showed me her ledger. I still owed millions of shillings. She said if I ran away, she'd find me. Said she had friends in the police who would bring me back." As she spoke, Jabari noticed a small sketchbook peeking from beneath the bed. "Is that yours?" Zuri hesitated before retrieving it. "I draw when I can. It helps me remember who I really am." The pages revealed extraordinary talent, vivid landscapes, expressive portraits, scenes of Kenyan life rendered with both technical skill and emotional depth. One haunting image showed a bird with clipped wings, gazing at the sky through ornate golden bars. "These are remarkable," Jabari said with genuine admiration. "You're an artist trapped in a cage." Something shifted in Zuri's eyes, a flicker of the person she might have been under different circumstances. When their allotted time ended, Jabari left her with a generous tip and a promise to return the following evening. He spent a sleepless night plagued by the image of talented, intelligent Zuri imprisoned in that blue house with its false promises. The next day, Jabari made discreet inquiries through his Kenyan business connections. The Lotus House, he learned, operated in a grey area of legality, protected by bribes to local officials and patronage from powerful men. Madam Jelani was known for targeting desperate women, particularly those with sick relatives or children to support. That evening, he returned to the Lotus House alone, requesting Zuri specifically and paying for the entire night, an extravagance that raised no eyebrows given his obvious wealth. Once they were alone, he laid out the plan he had formulated. "I want to help you leave this place, permanently." Zuri's laughter was bitter. "Unless you plan to pay my debt of millions, there's no way out." "Actually," Jabari said calmly, "that's exactly what I intend to do." 3 days later, Zuri walked out of the Lotus House for the last time, her few possessions in a small bag, her debt settled in full. Beside her walked Nia and Amora, and 3 other women whose freedoms Jabari had also purchased after learning their stories. "What happens now?" Zuri asked as they climbed into the waiting van. "Now you decide," Jabari replied. "I've arranged temporary housing and legitimate job opportunities for all of you. In your case, there's a position at an art gallery in Nairobi if you want it. Or education, if you prefer. Your life belongs to you again." Later, as the van carried them away from Mombasa toward new possibilities, Zuri watched the landscape change through the window. The shame and trauma of the Lotus House wouldn't disappear overnight. She knew healing would take time. But for the first time in years, she allowed herself to imagine a future of her own choosing. Beside her on the seat lay a new sketchbook, Jabari's parting gift, its blank pages awaiting the story she would now write for herself. In the distance, storm clouds gathered over the savannah, promising rain to wash clean the parched earth. Zuri opened the sketchbook and began to draw.